know, if you've had a significant other, parent, child, teacher, we all understand that there are differences between hearing and listening. I know I'm guilty. I hear my son tell me he needs cupcakes for a bake sale, but I don't actually hear it until late at night when I'm forced to stay up late and make cupcakes. So the book defined listening as being able to understand, analyze, and appropriately respond to a message. And I spoke with my sister, Agent Wing at the FBI, and she's been part of the Capital Response Team in DC, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and one of her tasks was to coordinate her mom's inauguration. So obviously a high level of listening required for her job. She's participated with groups ranging from 5 people up to 300 people. And we discussed some of the poor listening habits that she's experienced. In general, for her smaller groups, they participate in a roundtable discussion with each person taking a turn. She noted that they, for the most part, are polite, take turns, and provide some beneficial feedback. But some of the listening habits, poor listening habits we discussed was, one was pseudo-listening. When you're not actually listening to somebody, you pretend like you're listening. She noted sometimes in their meetings, somebody is constantly, texting or emailing, but yet nodding their head, so it looks as if they're listening, but it's pretty clear they're not. Selective listening, when somebody doesn't agree with what they're saying, so they avoid listening to them or look for faults in the speaker's statements. And she noted that that happens on occasion too. The person will completely just shut down if they don't agree with what's being said. At one point, one person just stopped providing information and started drawing circles on their paper. Superficial listening is when one pays attention to how members speak or their appearance. And she noticed that this doesn't really occur so much in her job, but she did note that sometimes there's a little bit more attention or respect given to those that are higher up. Disruptive listening is when one interrupts, does exaggerated eye rolling, shaking her head, or withholding attention. And she thought this was the most significant, that it occurs on a daily basis, especially if there's poor morale, that most times people will just stop contributing so that they can get out of the meeting earlier and just not contribute at all. So even at this high level of professionalism that's required for her job, she still experiences poor listening habits.
What do we believe is the most important thing in group work? Communication. And what's involved in communication? Listening. Listening is probably the most important thing that is involved in group work, a work environment, working with team members, anything as such that allows for you to progress from nothing to something, essentially. We have listening to hear, understand, remember, interpret, evaluate, and respond. All of these are key components that really are involved with how we're able to go from 0 to nothing. I interviewed one of my best friends who works in restaurant, and restaurants are obviously very vital for group work and communication. And if you're not listening to your coworkers, then you're not going to be able to get the correct information down, put the correct things in, and get the best guest service. 2 of the most important things that my friend Tara told me that were important for her in regards to working behind the bar with other bartenders is being able to remember for certain orders that when guests speak to you, remembering to respond. When you're listening to respond to a guest, you're able to respond to what the question they've asked you for, whether it's having beer knowledge or knowing what the menu is and knowing that what they're saying to you is what you've listened to, and you're able to respond and interpret what's been going on. Something that she said to me was being able to interpret what's being said usually allows for better communication and listening. As a team or group members, being able to listen to understand is something that's so important. If you're listening to a coworker or listening to someone that's involved in your group, you need to be able to understand what's going on. If you misinterpret, you're going to get incorrect information that is going to maybe set you back in your group or set you back as a team member in your bar or your restaurant. An example is this would probably be ringing in if you have someone that is working in the bar with you and they ask you, hey, can you ring in this for me? Or can you ring in a California burger for me? Or ring in a pale ale for me? And you ring in something completely different. That might not only mess up your check, or it might mess up what's going on with your coworkers. If you are listening to hear what's going on from your coworkers or your other group members, it allows you to be able to respond correctly. If you're listening in general, most people, parents, boyfriends, girlfriends, it's so vital to listen to actually hear. If you're listening and it goes in one ear and out the other, that's just very unfortunate for you because you're not getting all the information that you could have if you were truly listening. It allows you to interpret the information that's being said at the moment. It allows you to fully respond with correct actions and responses in general. And let's say if you're a new hire, if you're new in a group, if you're new in a club or a class, and you need to understand what's going on in general, you're not going to be able to follow if you don't have all of these key components that will allow you to essentially be successful. If you truly are listening and following each one of these steps, the best one is going to be listening to evaluate. And with all of that, you'll be able to analyze the information and know what's going on and be able to go from step to step to allow you to be successful. With that, if you're working in a group and you have team members, this will allow you to learn how to work together, how to be successful. And in general, it is the best form of communication. It involves some of the most key components that are involved in listening.
Some of the listening strategies that I'm going to be talking to you about today are how we can use our extra thought speed, the golden listening rule, paying attention to nonverbal behaviors, and minimizing our distractions. We actually speak at a rate of 125 or 150 words per minute, but evidence shows that we can hear or think at 3 to 4 times this rate. And so thought speed is the words per minute that we can think compared to the words per minute that we can actually speak. We can use this extra thought speed to summarize key ideas, identify how people are responding, and make sure you can hear clearly. I interviewed my neighbor, Mary, who works for a pharmaceutical company and sells vaccines to doctors. And I asked her, how does thought speed apply to the medical field? She told me that all of it applies anytime you're working in sales. Nonverbal cues let you know if they're listening to you or if their mind is somewhere else and are uninterested. Eye contact, body language is all being processed while she is addressing the group. My next topic, the golden rule. I'm sure you've all been told this since you were little, treat others the way you want to be treated. Is the same for listening. Listen to others the way you want them to listen to you. This is difficult because it asks you to suspend your own needs for someone else's. It's not even really a rule, but more of a positive listening attitude. If you aren't motivated to listen, you're not going to listen to the speaker. People who use this golden listening rule are interested, open-minded, and oftentimes patient with the speaker. So I asked Mary, when trying to talk to potential buyers, how important is it that you show interest? And she said that the more they talk, you let them talk during a sale, and you listen, you understand their perspective. This allows you to extract more information by just letting them listen. They like to ramble on about themselves and what they like, and this gives you insight on how big the potential sale could be. The third topic is how we can minimize distractions. There are often many environmental distractions, such as loud and annoying noises, or if the room is too hot or too cold. Room decor can oftentimes take away from the speaker, and any outside activities happening outside windows or an open door can draw the attention away from the speaker. If a member is speaking too slowly or quietly or in a monotone, it is difficult for people to remain interested and take notes on the subject. So I asked Mary, do you prepare meetings in locations with minimal distractions? And I found this interesting that they actually take this a lot into account when planning their meetings. They make sure there's no background music, no open doors, no windows in the meeting room, and if there are windows, curtains are closed. They meet at lunches most of the time with the doctors, so they invite the doctor to lunch and feed them and then get them to do the sale. And so they never meet on a patio because there's way too many distractions. And they actually have the waiters and waitresses prepped in advance so that they do not disrupt the presentation or group meeting. And the last topic I'm going to be talking to you guys about today is paying attention to nonverbal behaviors. Speakers don't communicate all their meaning through their words. Research indicates that nearly half of a speaker's meaning is conveyed nonverbally. So if we are not paying attention to these nonverbal cues, we miss out on a lot of information. And these nonverbal cues can often be applied to the medical field.
So as Jack had mentioned, nonverbal behavior is an important listening strategy in the medical field. And I learned this when I interviewed my stepdad, who is a CVT, or cardiovascular heart technologist. And as a CVT, he works in a group of 2 to 3 people who are trained to work in heart procedures and cardiovascular procedures. And there's a monitor, a circulator, and a scrub tech. The monitor records the data, the circulator helps get the supplies, and the scrub tech helps with procedures. And I found that this was related to nonverbal behavior because in a situation where the doctor is doing a procedure, he could be doing something and then all of a sudden something is going to change, and the look on his face, the facial expression will change from just, relaxed to concern. And everyone that is working in the group must be proactive and paying attention and listening to these nonverbal behaviors, because that means, oh no, I might have to change what I'm about to grab or what I'm about to do. So it's really important. And occasionally they will also use hand signals like L4, which means that they're gonna put a catheter in or something like that. So they definitely have to be paying attention to hand gestures and facial expressions when they are doing procedures. Some other key listening strategies that are important as a CBT is asking yourself what's in it for me. And this is really important because what's in it for me means even though something may be repetitive or boring or you're uninterested, you have to find a reason to pay attention. You have to find something that's worth it to listen to. And this is super important because people's lives are on the line. They're doing heart procedures. They're, people are, under the knife. And if you are not paying attention, you could miss something that is so important. And if, they're about to put a pacemaker in, but something completely changes and they have to put a stent in, it could completely mess up the entire procedure and kill the person potentially if they're not paying attention and finding the reason to listen. They cannot get distracted and not pay attention to what's going on, because so the what's in it for me is the people's lives are on the line. Another one is listening before you leap. That is really important, which means you make sure you understand something before you jump to conclusions or respond. And it gives you time to adjust your reaction so you're not just like blah, 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 blah. And as a CBT, this is really important because my stepdad told me that sometimes the doctor will be doing something and the technologist may not actually agree with what they're doing, but because the doctor has the power, they can't just be like, you're not doing that, right? That doesn't work, you can't do that, that's the doctor. And so if they do have something to say and they want to make a point and dispute it, they have a time that's called a timeout, which happens before the procedure. And that's when they kind of give the background information on the patient, what they're about to do, and everything that's going to go on. And if you don't agree with something that the doctor is going to do, you can say, oh, this is like, I think you should do this instead, and the doctor has to come to a conclusion. But you can't just jump to conclusions yourself because that could mess up the whole procedure. And lastly, is taking relevant notes. This is a job as a CBT. The monitor is the person who takes the notes. They take notes that are relevant, and it's on a template, and it's on a computer. They type in words, it'll process it, and it's very easy to understand. So taking relevant notes is when you take notes that are not just anything and everything. It's groups that are useful and specific and will help everyone in the group and are easy to understand. It can't just be notes on end on end. You have to make something that's specific and easy to understand. So in this situation, this template that they use, can be used or read by the doctor, by the technologist, by the patient, or even insurance companies or something like that. They're able to use these notes to understand what is going on during each procedure and taking down everything the doctor is doing. And the next thing is listening strategies are also important in genders.
When in a group work setting, all members contribute their listening skills and abilities to help achieve the common goal of the group. And within your group, you may notice some gender differences. Men tend to employ different listening styles that enables them to focus on information and the main points, while women tend to focus on the emotion. In the textbook, it claims that men tend to be more of the analytic listeners, and this type of listening requires critical listening skills and just able